Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, here we are in Quadmaster's layer, and all the other steps will be done here using the computer, okay, because we have to program the flight controller, we have to program all the aspects of tilting, and we will also be talking about the concepts of mixing and flight concepts, stuff like that. So first let's begin and let's look at the programming concept for the radio control. Okay, to begin with, you will program the radio basically for a fixed wing aircraft, so that is normal fixed wing aircraft, and you will leave your reverse setting to stock radio settings, because we can do the reversing of channels using the flight controller programming. So we are not going to touch there. Well, endpoints, we are not going to touch them. Dual rate and expo, well, that depends on the user's choice, how responsive they want their quad to be on the stick movements. So basically, to program the radio, it is very simple, piece of cake totally. But the programming or the mixing for the tilt controls, that's what is something that I'm going to describe in details, and I hope you will understand that. So first thing first, as you have remembered, we have connected the tilt servo to channel 6, okay, channel 6 of our radio. Remember that thing. Now let's turn the radio on and let's look at the programming. So for radio, we have set a new model, we reset it, and we made sure it's aerobatics. That means it's acrobatic, or simply plane, 4-channel plane. Go to the programming. Remember, this is Futaba radio, so if you have a Futaba radio, you can follow this programming. If you don't have a Futaba radio, you have to follow the concept that I'm going to describe. So here we are for the reverse. I left it on the Futaba stock settings. Okay, I did not do any other changes, except that I changed the auxiliary channels to switch C, channel 5 to switch C. Now channel 5 is your channel which is going to change the flight modes, okay? This is the channel which will change the flight modes of your flight controller. So flight modes that I'm going to use are flight mode that I'm going to use are with the 3-position switch, that is switch C on my Futaba radio, and that will be attitude mode, so that I can use get the benefits of tilt rotor on attitude mode. And then I will set the remaining 2 to Acro Plus or Ratitude mode, something like that. Now, we will talk about the Ratitude, Attitude, and Acro Plus mode later when we will talk about the flight controller programming. For now, remember that the channel 5 I have set to 3-position switch because I want to use 3 different flight modes. Then we have a DT5 trimmer, okay? The trimmer is right here, this one. DT5 trimmer I will use to trim the tilt angle. Let me power on the quadcopter. So if I don't want to use dynamic tilting, which is with the elevator, I just want to fly it like a traditional quadcopter, but with the angled motor all the time, to use the Acro Plus mode or something. So I can use my DT5 trimmer, which is set on channel 6, I can see here, and I can actually set the motor angle as per my requirement. So that means this is a completely traditional quadcopter with the rotors tilted, but this is a fixed tilting, and when I want to land, my quadcopter will be hovering this way and camera looking up. I can always center the rotors using the trimmer. Okay, so this way in the center, arms, motor mounts are perfectly horizontally leveled, and then using the trimmer I can actually trim the angle as I want. So that was channel 6 on DT5. Rest, I'm not using any more channels. Now let's talk about the programming or the mixing. So this was the auxiliary channel setup. Okay, switch C for flight modes, switch DT5, sorry, not switch, DT5 is for the fixed tilting, that is trimming on the tilting. Now let's come to the programming mix. What you want to do is you want to create two programming mixes. One is to use the dynamic rotor tilting. As you know, we have connected the servo to channel 6. So we are going to create a mix which is elevator to channel 6. My channel 6 is flaps. Let me zoom in. My channel 6 is flaps. Okay, so I have created a mix. Master is the elevator and slave channel is flap, that is channel 6. And then I go ahead and put in the values according to how much my motors will tilt. Next, you will have to set a switch. In my case, I have set switch G, okay, right here, and position is down to turn on this mixing. Now for the values, you can see my values are 98 and 85, 98% and 85. Okay, these are my values, but your values could be different. Why these values? It's because when I turn on the tilting, dynamic tilting, I will go all the way forward and I will see if the connecting rod is hitting somewhere and servo is buzzing. In that case, I will simply reduce this value. Okay, if I reduce this value, you can see the effect. The tilting is changing. So I can increase this value by holding the elevator all the way up until I find that the arms cannot move anymore. So I will set it on 95%, where it is completely safe and everything is moving to their limits, okay, and not putting any kind of burden on the servo. Alright, similarly I will do it for the rear. I will move the elevator all the way back, okay, and then I will change the values. So for me, 85% is working perfectly, and now you can see my dynamic rotor tilting is working. If I want, I can simply turn it off by using the switch G that I have just set. Okay, so let's review one more time. You're going to make the first mix, which is elevator to flaps or elevator to the channel where your servo is connected. Okay, so elevator to flap, switch G to activate, to turn it on and off. As you can see, on, off. Let me put the lights on and off. You can see mixing is turning on and off. And once the mixing is on, you put in the values according to your travels on your quadcopter, and you can see in the background your quadcopter is tilting the rotors. It's actually walking. Oh, it walked away. Anyway, so this is the first quad that actually walks. This is the world's first quadcopter that can actually walk. Anyway, so this is the first mix. Now for the second mix, let me describe a little bit of concept. When you push forward on the stick, that is elevator stick, your quadcopter will tilt and then move forward. You don't want your quadcopter to tilt too much. You want your motors to tilt more and your quadcopter to pick up its speed on the motor tilting rather than the whole quadcopter tilting. Because if the whole quadcopter tilts and your motors are also tilting, your quadcopter will dive down and it will be difficult to control. You will pull back on motors and the quadcopter will climb up. So it's like difficult to control. So what we want to do is we want to reduce this tilting effect on the elevator, and we just want quadcopter to tilt a little but motors tilt more, so that quadcopter will be leveled and pick up the speed due to the rotor tilting. I have described this concept before. So what we are doing here is creating, so what we are doing here, we are creating another mix which is called elevator to elevator. What we are doing is simply setting the master and slave elevator to elevator channel 2. We will set another switch for it, that is switch D, because sometimes you might want to use this mix, sometimes you don't want. So you can leave yourself a choice whether to use it or not. You can easily turn it on and off together with the first mixing, that is the rotor tilting. So what I did was I added the values in this one, minus 65. Now let's see the effect, because you cannot see the effect on the quadcopter here, but you can see the effect right here on the radio. Okay, let's go to the servos. You can see the elevator movement. Okay, at this time the elevator has all 100% values. So when I push forward, my quadcopter is gonna tilt at its full extent according to the flight controller, and at the same time my quadcopter will tilt rotor, which I don't want. So what I want is the quadcopter to tilt rotor, but this effect reduced. So I turn on the second mixing, and you can see suddenly my elevator right here, this effect is reduced a lot. You can see, because I'm using minus 65 values. So either up or down, my elevator effect is reduced a whole lot. Now if I turn off the mixing, this is the second mixing, you can see I have full 100% values on the elevator. So when I want to fly in manual Acro Plus modes, or like a traditional quad, I will be using the full values on the elevator channel. But when I want to benefit completely with the tilt rotor or dynamic rotor tilting, I will simply turn on the mixing and reduce the elevator effect, and let the quadcopter pick up the speed on rotor tilting rather than the whole quadcopter tilting. Now if I turn both of these mixes on, okay, what is going to happen? If both mixes are on, when I push forward, rotors will tilt more, quadcopter will tilt a little because of the reduced elevator effect mixing, and quadcopter will fly really fast, completely leveled using the rotor tilting only. So I hope this concept is clear. Once again, let's go look at the mixings. Mixing 1 is your elevator to servo, and here you want to put more and more values so that servo will tilt more. And then the next mixing is elevator to elevator. So we mix elevator channel to elevator channel, and we put in negative values. Now these values these values depend upon your flight style. You can put them to 65, 75, but don't reduce elevator effect too much, because later you will have trouble controlling. Generally, I found, according to my experience, 50% to 65% are the best range for these values, elevator to elevator mixing values. So go with 50%, minus 50% to minus 65% at the max. Okay? So I hope this all is clear about the radio programming and how you will use your mixing in order to control the rotor tilting. Now the next step is to program the CC3D. Let us do that right away, and it's also very simple piece of cake.